Hi everyone, I welcome you to the class of business to business marketing. In the last lecture, we were discussing about pricing and we discussed why pricing happens to be one of the most important you know uh, parts of any business, because pricing can significantly impact the profitability of a firm, and not only the profitability, it can impact the market share, the total sales and everything, right? So, the challenge with pricing is that pricing is very difficult to pinpoint or come to a very objective conclusion, right? What exactly should be the price is very difficult to comprehend. Now, until unless somebody does a very serious research about understanding what the pricing is all about and what customers prefer and all, it is very difficult to understand pricing. So, pricing in a research from Harvard Business School, they had said that 1% change in price of a product can improve the profitability of a firm by 11%, keeping all other things constant. So, this shows that pricing happens to make the biggest impact on profitability of firms, right? But what is that willingness to pay, and why it is important to conduct research? Now, you see, willingness to pay is something which is what the customer is ready to pay or willing to pay, right? So, price, as it is written out here, if you can see, price happens to be the most important lever or negotiation lever, and which if not properly done, then it can lead to a transaction failure. Okay. And in almost all cases, you will see that buyers tend to demand the lowest price and search for the highest value, whereas the reverse happens true for the sellers. Sellers want the price to be at the highest of their offering, right, for their offering. So, in such a condition, there is always there is a gap between what the buyer wants and the seller wants. Okay. So, seller wants the highest price point, the buyer wants the lowest price point. Now, in between the gap, there is a gap. Now, this gap is called as ZOPA, or zone of potential agreement. Now, this zone of potential agreement helps sellers and buyers to negotiate and come to a point where they both agree. Okay. Now, let us look at this case. The buyer is hoping to purchase a vehicle for a price between 8,500 and 12,000. The seller is willing to sell for a price between 8,750 and $12,250. In this scenario, a positive bargaining zone exists between 8,750 and 12,250. Now, let me show you this, right. Now, this is where the seller's reservation price is, okay, and the buyer's reservation price, right. So, this is what the buyer maximum would pay, and this is what the seller is the minimum that the seller is ready to sell for. Now, if you take a total, so if you, this is the buyer's total reservation price, the total price, and this is the price of the seller, the highest selling point, this is the highest point, and this is the minimum that he is ready to go for. So, this difference between these two, this is the point, if you see. So, this green line, this tells us this is the point where both the buyer and seller will agree, and they can lie anywhere in between this zone, right. Reservation pricing simply means the limit on the price for a good or service. Okay. So, the minimum is, let us say 8,750 and the maximum is, let us say 12,000. Okay. This is the range which is called the zone of potential agreement, and for any product, right, be it a computer product, be it a software product, be it a automobile, be it any product, there is always a zone of potential agreement which the buyer and the seller will need to understand. Okay. What influences this willingness to pay? Willingness to pay gets influenced by certain factors. For example, the first point is the reference price. Now, as you will know, whenever a buyer looks at a price, right, what we consider as the economic value, right, economic value. So, what he does is basically how does he dictate or decide the price? Now, the two things are important. One, the reference price. So, reference price plus the differential value. Okay. Now, what does it mean by reference price and differential value? Reference price is the price which is the price at which the competitor, the nearest competitor of the company is selling its products, right. Let us say there are two companies, HCL, HCL and Dell, okay. Give an example. Now, maybe they have products in a particular category which are very closely related, and HCL feels Dell is the closest competitor and vice versa. So, if HCL, for if a customer wants to buy a HCL product, let us say, what he would do? He would look at the reference price. Now, reference price would be the price of the product of Dell, right, the nearest competitor, plus what differential value is the HCL product giving in comparison to others in the market, right. Now, the this differential value, as I think I have told, is sometimes termed as monetary value. So, in terms of monetary value plus psychological value, right, psychological value. So, a customer can derive benefits differential value from in terms of monetary or in terms of psychological value. So, in total, while looking at this total, the customer decides what the price he is ready to pay. So, reference price, perceived quality. So, perceived quality will impact the value, right, that the customer feels, the brand image of the product, right, what alternatives are available in the market, right. If this product, you do not buy this product, then what is the alternative, how would you complete your task. Similarly, emotional and self expressive benefits, for example, psychologically they are connected. Now, what kind of emotional benefits are you deriving from a product? Now, if it is high or low, that will also have an impact on the amount of value that the customer is ready to pay or willing to pay. Okay. So, these are some factors which always impact the willingness to pay factor. Okay. One type of pricing that is very important and which we have discussed is geographical pricing. Now, what is geographical pricing? Pricing consists of deciding how to price the company's products in different geographic locations. Now, is many a times you must have seen that you buy a product and the product has different values. For example, even a mobile phone, right, an Apple mobile phone. Now, the phone which is available in India and the phone which is the same phone model is available in, let us say, USA, may be priced differently, right. Now, geographical location has an impact on the pricing of a product. Should the company charge higher prices to customers located at distant places just because to cover up their transaction cost, their transportation cost and all, or they should not do it, right. So, what should be done? Because if you increase the cost, there is a fear of losing sales also, right. So, it involves cost when you talk about geographical pricing. So, you are talking about transportation or transaction cost basically, which involves cost like freight, transit insurance, sales tax and other taxes. Okay. Now, how are these taxes or this total cost when they are passed on to the customer, how would the customer react to it, right. So, that is very important. When you talk about geographical pricing, two methods are very important, ex factory and FOR destination. So, what is ex factory? It means that the seller will charge the cost of freight and insurance to the buyer. So, what is happening in the ex factory? The seller is passing on the cost to the customer, right. So, the customer has to bear the price, this cost. Okay. The more distant customers, landed costs are higher because of the freight cost. So, more the distance, higher will be this cost. Okay. The second is free on road or free on board destination. It means the freight costs are absorbed by the seller. Now, this is like on the contrary opposite. Now, what is happening here? The seller is absorbing the cost, right, and he is not passing it on to the customer. In this method of price, all the customers get the product at the same price irrespective of their locations. Now, wherever the location may be, the price remains the same. But this can be sometimes very detrimental to the company because the company may have to incur a lot of losses. Okay. ultimately what is this price? What is price all about and why price is so important we have already discussed, but the meaning of price is, when we talk about price, these are the terms that are important to understand. What is the product's price, right? So, whenever in a B2B market you are talking about pricing, right, in a B2B market. So, when you are talking about pricing, here pricing is not the MRP, it is not about the MRP only, right. We are not talking about the MRP, we are not talking about any list price or anything. Here we talk about pricing in totality. Now, pricing in totality is total economic value that the buyer gets, economic value, right, or total cost of management you can say. Now, what does it comprise of? The price of the product, the transportation cost, transit cost, installation cost, risk of product failure, what if the product fails, right, delay in delivery and lack of technical supports or services. Now, all these will have some amount of cost, right. The cost may be in small fractions, delta 1, delta 2, delta 3, but the summation of all this together, right, will tell you the total cost of the product, right. And how much is the buyer ready to pay for a B2B product depends on what is the risk of product failure, what is the delay in delivery, so how much of delivery can happen. So, all these things will totally talk about the price in the B2B market. In the when we talk about B2B or any market, one thing that is very important is value creation. Now, as we said, value based pricing in one of the class we also discussed, and today we will be doing it more extensively. Value creation is something like what is that additional factor that the customer is getting. Now, if a company, if a seller is creating that additional value, that can act as a differentiator for the seller, isn't it? Research suggests that most companies offer similar services. However, the following seems to be more prominent. What are those four services? Service support. So, what kind of service, let us say, is a software seller, let us say a company like Infosys or Wipro or TCS offering to its clients like Citibank or anybody, what kind of support they are offering? How much of personal interactions are involved? See, in the B2B market, personal one to one relationship or direct marketing is extremely essential, extremely important, because these products are generally designed or customized according to the need of the customer, right, and they are very expensive or very high priced products. Okay. So, the customer always looks for a personal interaction, so that he is worried, because in case the seller makes a offers a product and the product somehow, if he or she has not understood the buyer's requirement or the customer's requirement, there might be some technical glitch that can occur in middle or in between, right. So, if that happens, then the entire process of the the buyer or the customer can come to some kind of a problem or some kind of a halt or something, which will eventually lead to lots of losses for the company. So, personal interaction, supplier know-how and ability to improve the customer's time to market. So, this is called agility or time to market. How agile the customer can become due to the products that it is using from the suppliers. So, the supplier's product, is it helping the buyer to become more flexible, more agile, more fast and faster to the market, right. So, these are some important points research says are very critical, and some other moderating factors could be like product quality, what kind of product quality you are talking about, and how are you delivering the product, and what is the acquisition and operating cost, right. So, on basis of this, in a B2B market or any market, largely in a B2B market, the the seller can create some differentiation of its products in the consumer's mind or the buyer's mind. Now, we said value based approach. Now, what is this value based approach for pricing? So, we said pricing is cost based, pricing is competition based, it is value based, right. So, nowadays most of the firms we are talking about value based pricing. Now, why value based pricing? First of all, I had also told you the reason that it is very, suppose let us say there is a product, let us say this pen, right, is let us say $10, okay, $10 is priced at $10. Now, let us say if we come to know that people are ready to, this particular brand are ready to pay up to $14, that means what? For every pen, every marker, every pen, the company is at this point losing $4, right. So, if they are let us say selling 1 lakh units, so simple calculation says 4 lakh units losses are happening, right. Let us say if the value, the company, the people feel the value which is willingness to pay, we have just covered, is it should not be more than $10, maximum it should be let us say $9, and you are now selling at $10. So, there is a high probability that the customer will leave you and will not take your product, rather go to the nearest competitor's product. Okay. So, what is this value based approach for pricing? How do marketers understand it, and how should we also understand and use it? Value based pricing says there are few steps which are very important for us. The first thing is, when you talk about value based pricing, is to identify or define the key market segments. Now, as you know, in the B2B space, we have understood that a product can be used multiple ways, right. So, there can be multiple applications of the same product, right. So, that means there can be various segments also. We have studied in B2B while segmenting the market, we have studied about demographic segmentation, we have studied about behavioral segmentation, we have talked about operating variable, right, on basis of purchasing power. So, the segmentation in the B2B market on your past experience, right, all many factors. So, first of all, defining the key market segments is very essential, because if let us say there are 3 segments S1, S2 and S3, right, and the kind of need S1 has will differ from S2 and S3. Similarly, the kind of need for a product, let us say for any product, for any B2B product, S2 has will be differing from S1 and S3, and similarly for S3. So, identifying the segments is the most important part, and it is highly essential. And once we have identified the segment, it is a little tough exercise, but once you can, if you identify the segment, which we have already done long back in our earlier lectures, it becomes easy for the seller to focus on the customer, to focus on the needs and values of the customer. Then in this next point we say is isolating the most significant drivers of value. Now, what are the significant drivers of value? Drivers of value means something that enhances the function value for the customer, right. So, what could be the drivers of value? Could be profitability, could be utility, anything, right. So, the seller or the seller has to understand, the company which is selling the product must understand what are the drivers of value for the customer. Okay. That means, in simple terms, how is the customer going to use my product and gain out of it. Okay. Third thing is to quantify the impact of your product or service on each value driver in the customer's business. So, if you understand how much it is going to save, let us say a customer, a business firm is using a particular machinery, right, a machinery. Now, by using this particular machinery from a seller, let us say some of its operational steps are taking now less time, right, and less time and less resources. So, as a result of it, what is happening, the cost, the raw material requirement is decreasing, the number of people involved is decreasing. So, the cost is also decreasing, right. So, how does it impact? That has to be understood. Then estimating the incremental value created by your product or service, particularly for those features that are unique. Now, what are those unique features that your product is giving to the customer, and how is which the competitors are not able to offer, and how is your customer going to gain out of it? If one understands that, that creates that differential value which I explained in the last lecture, last slide, differential value, that creates the differential value, right. So, which could be monetary or psychological in nature. And once we understand all this, then we will create a pricing strategy. So, the pricing strategy again would be in a range, right. So, what is this range? The range where both the buyer and the seller will agree, the zupa what we had said. Okay. Look at this example of value based pricing. So, India Mart says come online with India Mart and get business leads. Now, business leads, it says that the customer, if you join us, then you can generate more leads for your business, right, from your location, preferred cities and the world over. So, that gives you an international exposure to the companies who will be their clients. So, as a result, the buyers would be maybe happy and try to take advantage of this kind of companies. Okay. So, this is if suppose there is a client, let us say a new client who does not have too many business leads or business clients internationally. So, if it feels that India Mart is going to help them in generating leads from overseas, then they might become customers to or clients to India Mart, right. So, this is an example of value based pricing. So, you can see even in terms of pricing, now what is the company doing? It can create different kinds of plans. For example, buy now, monthly plan, annual plan and multi-year or lifelong plan, you can say, right. So, annually if I am paying, I will pay 28,500. If I will take a lifelong or some certain years for, let us say, which is substantially high, then it is 75,000. So, what kind of plan, what kind of value are you deriving, that will decide what kind of price are you ready to pay for a particular product of the company. Okay. Now, when we talk about value drivers, as I said, the goal is to identify significant drivers of value. That is what we had said in the slide, right. So, when we talk about drivers of value, we have to understand there are two types of drivers. One can be cost drivers, which can reduce your cost maybe, and one can be revenue drivers, which can increase your profits, right. So, cost drivers, if you see, create value by economic savings, right. So, the cost drivers, let us say if a seller is selling a product to a buyer, and by using the seller's product, the buyer is able to reduce some of its operational steps, maybe for example some operational procedures. So, that will help the, for example, the company, the buyer need not do more of quality control checks unnecessarily, because the seller's product is good enough to take care of that. So, in such a situation, this will help in some economic savings, right, time and economic savings. Example, machine can process more widgets. There is a machine which can process more widgets per hour with less electricity and labor. So, less electricity and labor cost is the input cost savings which the company may derive. And if you maybe multiply for a long period of time, for example, certain number of years, then the break even point may come down. The break even, the company can achieve a break even with a in a certain period of time. So, because they are saving on electricity and labor. Similarly, when you talk about revenue drivers, what is happening? Add incremental value by facilitating revenue or margin. Now, packaging is more attractive, thus increasing sales. Now, the packaging of the product is so attractive that it is helping in increasing sales, right. Or let us say post purchase, post purchase, right, services. Now, a company who is buying is always worried ki what will be my post purchase service cost or maintenance cost. So, if the company, the seller, let us say helps in helps in managing that, then it directly influences the revenue, directly influences the profitability of the company. Okay. One thing in when you talk about value based approach is also we said quantifying the impact of firms, right. In that we are talking about this slide, if you in case this is the slide we are talking about, right. So, quantify impact of firms, product or service on customers business model. Does it make or save money? How much? So, answering this question is very important. Does it make money? Does it save money? How much it is saving? So, we need to quantify. We should be able to quantify. Let us say it is saving us about 2 to 3%, right, and the cost which we are bearing is, let us say, 5%. So, we go for this one because this is more, because the cost is more and the savings is less, but let us say it is giving us now 6 to 7%. So, the cost is now less and the savings are more. So, you have to understand how much we have to quantify that, how much are we actually gaining. Compare the firm's product service to the next best alternative. For example, it says 3 points. Isolate the unique features that differ from competitor. So, what are the unique features that the competitor's product is not having, right? So, it might be in terms of the product's value, it might be the terms of design, in terms of the product's aesthetics, it can be in the terms of functioning, it can be in terms of the services, anything. Do those features provide value that customer cannot get elsewhere? This question it should be answered. How much value does it create? Now, by answering this, it helps to understand what kind of value the customer would generate. Then understand how customer uses the product and how much value will he or she realize. Because sometimes the utility of the product is also very important. Many a times companies do not give emphasis on how the buyer is going to utilize the product, but it is possible that the buyer is making very good application or very good utility or usage of this product. So, or they might not be able to utilize also on the other hand, but if it is a favorable situation, let us say, so we need to understand how are they using this product, where are they using this product and what benefits are they deriving from this product. After understanding all this, the price is developed. Okay. Benefit is, you see, the business marketer can gain a competitive advantage. A competitive advantage, that means in the among the competitors it creates a certain advantage over others by employing a value based approach, because it helps them to differentiate and provide adequate benefit to the customers. So, it helps in developing by employing a value based approach and by developing tools to document and communicate their unique value to the customer. So, all these are the benefits that the customer will generate, and on basis of this benefit the customer decides how much should be the value of this product, and this value will decide what is the final price of this product. If you look at one price consideration, one indicator of value of how pricing is a price is an indicator of value. One example I will bring. Price affects the perception of quality, right? We said that, and price affects the customer's perception of prestige, status symbol, your feelings and all, right. So, this is an example which I thought I should share. This is a case of Johnson and Johnson's stent case, Cipher stent case. So, this company was selling stent where in the market the nearest competitor was selling at 1050, and the raw material was somewhere in between $375. The cost of producing a stent, right, was 375. So, when Johnson and Johnson came, Johnson and Johnson realized what is the cost that the customer has to bear. What is the cost the customer has to bear if they have to use a competitor's product. So, they saw that the cost of stent was associated with the cost of hospitalization also, right. So, what was the cost of hospitalization? So, the cost of hospitalization was almost, let us say, 4 times or 5 times of this cost of stent, right. So, they realized that if the cost of stent is 1050, which is the competitor stent, and there is a chance probability that the 25% probability that the customer has to visit the hospital every second year, and visiting a hospital is almost, let us say, $10,000, let us say $10,000. That means what is happening, if they are visiting twice, then the cost is becoming almost 20,000 plus the cost of stent. What Johnson and Johnson did was they developed a stent, and where the quality they ensured the quality to be very, very high, and they said maybe the chances of failure is not 25%, but only 5%. So, the visit to the hospital now would be frequently reduced drastically. So, instead of going every 2-3 years, maybe somebody has to visit the hospital because of the stent for after 5-6 years or 7 years, right. So, this saving, when they calculated and they found out, they got a range that if Johnson and Johnson was earlier pricing at a very low price, they realized that if they could substantially increase the price, right. So, this found that the cost of raw material was 375, let us say dollars, and the value that the customer was offering, was ready to pay, this has been calculated, I can also calculate. So, was reaching up to $3,400, right. So, what Johnson & Johnson did, so this was the zone of potential agreement, you can say, or the zone where they could negotiate. So, they set the price at 3195, right, slightly lower than the higher value. And interestingly, what happened is, after doing this, Johnson & Johnson, the market share of Cypher stent increased up to almost 85%, right, and they completely took over the United States market share or the stent market share, right. So, here what we are trying to say is that, you see, although the nearest competitor was only at 1050 and this was at 3195, which is almost more than 3 times, still the company could capture 85% market share, right. So, value based pricing has become a very important parameter and very important part of the discussion for everybody today, and this is especially true for the B2B market, right. So, with this I would like to wind up today's lecture. Thank you very much, and we will meet in the next lecture. Till then, take care. Bye bye.